ridiculous. Ridiculous. I'll give it a few minutes to I can figure out whether it's gonna keep buffering or losing signal, whatever you want to call it. I thought I would do a little experiment. If you're in the city and you're buying a bunch of stuff, figure out how much weight. Because if you figure on leaving town in a hurry someday, you better have a really good vehicle, a really heavy vehicle, a really heavy armored vehicle, and a lot of firepower. If you don't have any of that, don't buy any more stuff. Get out of town now. Get out of town ahead of time. I did that in 1997, okay? I wanted to get out of town my whole life. I did not like Denver. I did not like a big city. I grew up going out to the farms in summertime and going camping in the mountains in the summertime, and I did not like the city. Neither did my wife, the woman that I ended up marrying. Neither of us liked the city. We wanted out, so I'm not going to belabor that point again. My point is this, that for 17 years I accumulated stuff. I probably came to the end of it about 95. Anyway, the teepees were probably the last heavy thing I bought. The 2 teepees. Because I realized I needed to get out of town. I needed a place to go. You can't just bug out and start driving and eventually come to some place that's safe. You're going to get shot, robbed, or find a place where you can get along. They can be a blessing to you, or you're going to go someplace and try to take advantage of someone and they're going to throw you out, or you're going to get shot. So notice that you're going to get shot quite a few times. That's going to happen to a lot of people. You don't go to somebody's house and steal from them, and that's been happening around here a lot lately. From me, from Bill, from John, you know, people that have been here for 10, 20 years that don't like thieves. So don't be a thief and think you're going to get away with it. Don't come here to the Ozark Plateau and think you're going to be selfish. You cannot be selfish and get along with other people, not on a long-term basis. Sorry, it's not going to happen. I will say once more, if you live in a meal-centric universe, if you are the center of your universe, you're not going to realize it. I'm just telling you that as a forewarning for those people who are stupid enough to not realize that they live in a meal-centric universe. If everything you do is judged or gauged by what benefit you get, how much it's going to do for you. Like there's a guy here that he will not buy anything from me. He will not buy anything for anybody else. He only buys stuff for himself, and he buys a lot of stuff for himself. He lives in a meal-centric universe. He won't do anything for anybody else. Won't let anybody use his car. Won't take anybody anywhere. You know, it's a meal-centric universe. So I'm not going to belabor that point anymore either. Okay, on to the next thing. I was thinking about this stuff idea. You know, if you're a prepper. Oh, I know what it was. This same guy asked me, how come you keep buying all this cordless stuff? He said, the grid's going down. I said, what does the grid have to do going down with buying cordless stuff? If you don't have good tools, you're not going to be able to build anything. You're not going to be able to do anything. You're not going to fix a fence and build a cabin. Nothing. Cordless tools are the way to go because they're powerful. In some cases, they're more powerful than the plug-in-the-wall version. I don't think it's going to be the case with this sucker here that I got, this chainsaw I just got. This thing is heavy. I mean, it's heavy. I mean, did you understand me? It's heavy. Did you hear me? It's heavy. I got to check the weight on that. It's nutty. I'll bet you it's about as heavy as a really powerful chainsaw, gas chainsaw. Anyway, not if it's powerful, but it's certainly heavy. Okay, so my point is this. Cordless tools are awesome. If you don't have a battery pack, bank, and a solar panel, somebody's going to have it. You can recharge your cordless tools with an inverter. Hello. You can recharge them from solar power. Hello. You don't have to have 110 stuff. You don't have to have 110. I got this because it's quiet. You know, like I said before, I have 5 points, 6 points. I don't know. I'll try to tabulate everything up and put it in the description down on that video. My point is this: cordless tools are awesome, and even a quarter tube like this, you can run it off of a 110 and an inverter. It might draw too much power for your battery bank, but you can run it for a few minutes. You can do something you need to done. So anyway, that's my point for the day. Okay, so I'm going to get into reading. Hello, anybody on? Probably not. No, nobody's on. Okay, I don't care. I don't care what you came to do. I came to praise the Lord. looks like I'm leaning against the wall. I also need to figure out what size cord I need for this sucker. Because it's got a pretty good hefty cord coming out of it. I'm sure you need to have a pretty good high amp cord. What I want to do, I want to stand up without knocking this over. Let me turn that a bit. There, part of it's out the door. There, no, part of it's not out the door. Okay. Alrighty then, peoples. Oh, that's no go. Oh, that's bad. Alright, see the back of my bald head there. It's too bad. Okay, chapter 8. The only game in town. I kind of like this. The lighting is good. I can read. I'm backed into the bathroom area a little bit, shower area, because of that way the AC is not quite as noisy, I think. I got my floor in. I think I showed you that in another video. Curtains up, doors shut. I don't know if you can see the floor now. I'm not going to take this off. Too much hassle. So I got a nice floor in. It'll be really great in the wintertime. Okay, so here we go. Kokomo Joe. The only game in town. Mrs. Happy and Barry were laughing together as they looked out the front window of the toy store. They both watched Daniel racing down the street on his bicycle. I told you that boy was a snoop deep down, Mrs. Happy said. Her eyes took on a hard, glassy look. Boy, he was really scared, Barry said. He popped another little green candy in his mouth. The candy is called Sweet Temptations. Came in waxy paper wrappers. He seemed to be looking at something else on the big board. I mean, he wasn't just looking at the words. He saw more than he bargained for, the older woman said. But that's what he gets for spying on the big board. I still can't believe he's got one of those junky Spirit Flyer bicycles and a Goliath Super Wings, Barry said. How can he have two bicycles? Lots of children have two bicycles, Mrs. Happy replied. But they can only ride one at a time, correct? So it all depends on which bike he rides. But I thought you said there's a danger in those Spirit Flyers, Barry said. I mean, you've been telling me all summer that you and Goliath Industries work for the secret government behind the government. I thought you said Spirit Flyers were part of a secret invasion here in Centerville. Well, the boy probably doesn't know the dangers of the Spirit Flyers, the old woman said, but he will. Once the point system gets rolling along, he'll have to decide. You can tell if he's a friend or foe by which bicycle he chooses to ride. Not all those who have Spirit Flyer bicycles use them, fortunately. One of our biggest aims in the government and Goliath Industries is to convince those with Spirit Flyers that their bicycles are inferior and a danger to themselves. Plus, when they see what a high-level, fully equipped Goliath Super Wings can do, they'll forget all about those junky Spirit Flyers. It's happened many times, believe me. Yeah, right. That's another thing Barry said. I thought I was supposed to get the first Goliath Super Wings when they arrived. Well, I thought you would too, since you're number one and all, the old woman said. But he moved here with it already in his possession. Not much I could do about that, could I? Barry seemed bothered. He had seen firsthand some of the things the Spirit Flyer could do, and he was troubled by their mysterious powers, but he didn't trust the old bikes, nor did he want one. But he did want a Goliath Super Wing since he had heard so many good things about them from Mrs. Happy. Well, when will I get a Super Wings, Barry complained. Don't we need them to get rid of the little tricky Spirit Flyer bikes? All in good time, Mrs. Happy croaked, like a frog. She patted the eager boy on the head. I've made a request to headquarters. Those in authority think that if you help in turning Daniel away from riding a Spirit Flyer, you'll get enough points to qualify for a Super Wings. That's why it was good to get him in your little club of Cobras. He needs friends like you to influence him to be reasonable. And once the point system is rolling along, I think the boy will find it in his best interest to play ball with the rest of us. How will the point system do that? Barry asked. You'll see, the old woman replied with a smile. This town is about to be blessed with one of our government's finest experimental triumphs. Everyone has to play along with the point system. It's the only game in town, so let's set up. Let's get set up. I'll need your help since the children will be arriving soon. The old woman turned away from the window. Barry popped another 2 candies into his mouth and followed her back into her office. Daniel rode around aimlessly, thinking about what he had seen at the toy store. It took several minutes for his fear to subside. More than anything, he wanted to talk to the Kramer children and ask them questions, but he was afraid they didn't want to talk to him. Daniel figured the image in the big board was probably the ghost slave that the Kramer children had mentioned, but the reflection seemed a lot more real and powerful than any old ghost he had ever read about. Just looking into the eyes of his dark reflection on the big board made Daniel feel like he was looking into the deepest, most secret part of himself. There was something scary about seeing that. What was worse was the feeling that the big board might show others who you really were deep down. Daniel rode downtown slowly. He purposely rode past the sheriff's office again. He didn't see any Spirit Flyer bicycles. But what he did see interested the boy. A man in a uniform got out of the side door of a blue van. He pulled himself into a wheelchair and closed the sliding door. Daniel looked both ways and darted across the street on his old bike, ready for all in his exercise tongue. Darted across the street on his old bike for a better look. Old red bike for a better look. The man in the wheelchair smiled as he saw Daniel coming. He appeared to be some kind of policeman. Are you the sheriff? Daniel asked. I'm a deputy, the man said. My name's George. George Baker. What's your name? Daniel Bailey. I'm new in town. I've heard. Really? Daniel asked. It's hard to live in a town as small as Centerville and not hear about anyone new moving in, George said. But in this case, the sheriff's children, Susan and John Kramer, mentioned meeting you. She was speaking mighty highly of you a few days ago, Saturday, I believe it was. Oh, Daniel said. A lot had happened since then to change her opinion, but he wasn't sure he wanted to talk about that to this man. Still, George seemed very nice and willing to talk, and Daniel had sympathy for anyone in a wheelchair. Do you know John and Susan well? Known them all their lives, George said. Oh, Daniel said. He looked at the deputy's wheelchair. I was in a wheelchair once for 4 months. Me and my dad were hit by a drunk driver. That's a shame, George said. I was in an accident myself, hurt my back. I'm sorry, Daniel said. You learn to live with it, the deputy said, or you don't. I guess I better go, Daniel said. Then he had an idea. If you see Susan or John, would you tell them things aren't the way they seem? They may not understand, but I'd appreciate it. I'll tell them, George said. He said he had an easy smile. Thanks, Daniel said. George turned and wheeled up a wooden ramp that was on top of the steps. Daniel pedaled back into the street. When he looked back, the deputy had already disappeared into the office. Daniel rode back toward the town square. That's when he noticed several children moving toward Main Street. The children looked excited. When Daniel turned the corner on Main, he saw a bigger commotion. Down the block in front of a Happy Toy Store, all kinds of kids, young and old, short and tall, were gathering in the crowd. The sidewalk was impassable because so many bicycles were parked on the sidewalk. And the front door of the toy store was jammed. Every so often, a child clutching a small toy would work his way out through the crowd. Daniel remembered Coach Goober's announcement about the free toys and the scoreboard in the toy store. All the coaches must have made the same announcements. Then it occurred to Daniel that this mysterious big board was probably what the coaches were referring to in their announcements. Daniel rode along with the crowd and parked the Spirit Flyer. He looked through the big front windows of the toy store and saw Barry Smedlow handing out toys. Across the store, high on the wall, the big board was in motion. Lighted numbers flashed by and then paused. Every so often, a groan or the sound of applause or cheers was heard. Just then, Daniel noticed Barry Smedlow waving from inside the store. Come on in, Barry was saying. Barry nodded and inched his way toward the front door. He had a break when a large round boy pushed his way out of the toy store through the crowd. That left an opening as the other kids stood aside. Daniel darted through the door before the crowd closed in once more. A man standing by the door looked at Daniel for a second, but then let him pass. The inside of the toy store was full of the voices of children. 2 men in uniform were standing behind the long counter with the cash register, along with Barry Smedlow. One man would give Barry the toys. He was putting them into small purple plastic bags. Then they gave the toys to the waiting children, calling out each child's name. The other man who was holding a clipboard would make a mark. Daniel assumed they were checking off names. "This is free," Barry yelled. He tossed a sack to Daniel. He opened the sack and looked inside. The toy appeared not to be much of a toy at all, but a pad of paper, sort of like graph paper. At the top of the page were the words "point system scores." Another object in the bag appeared to be made of rubber. At first, Daniel couldn't tell what it was. Then he realized it was kind of an eraser that you slipped on the end of your pencil. Across the room, a shout went up as a bell rang. The big board was flashing numbers and lights and numbers at a dizzying speed. Daniel closed the sack and walked closer. Children were gathered in front of the big board, staring up at it as if in a spell. They looked exactly like children often look when watching television. Their mouths were slack and hung open, sort of glazed liquids on their eyes. Each was holding up his or her black number card. Mind-numbing alpha state, yeah. Turn your mind off. That's what TV does. It makes you stupid. The big board was flat. They looked there. Each was holding up his or her black number card. My turn, they would yell out when the mysterious black panel paused. Then Mrs. Happy would take a number card and instruct the owner how to address the big board. Big board on the wall. How do I rank in the scores of all? The little boy shouted. The big board went into action. Lights flashed and numbers danced. Then the numbers froze. Timmy Bellows, level 1, rank 76, score 740 points. My points went up and my rank got better, the boy named Timmy yelled. The big board spit his number card out. It must have been those practice goals I scored last night. See, I was ranked 78 before I came in here. Now he's 76 and went up 2 points. Ooh. Mrs. Happy held her hands up. She smiled on the children. They finally stopped talking. Now you've all had your turn, the old woman said cheerily. So it's time to let the others have their chance. Go out the front door quietly. Their faces fell as they turned and walked out with the others. The old woman looked straight at Daniel. She stared at him for a moment quietly. Then Barry ran from behind the counter and slapped Daniel on the back. Mrs. Happy smiled. It's sort of like a computer, Daniel said, staring at the mysterious dark panel, and the lights are kind of digital display. This boy knows his stuff, I can tell, Mrs. Happy said. You'll be getting points for that. You ought to give the big board a try, Barry said eagerly. Lots of numbers and ranks are changing. It's great. I've never been anything like this in Centerville. This is the scoreboard all the coaches are talking about, Daniel asked. You are a perceptive boy, Mrs. Happy said. She walked over to Daniel. She reached out and pinched his cheek cheerfully. I've heard you were special. It's tough nut to crack because you're special. Daniel stared hard at the dark panel. For a moment he thought he saw a blurred image in the deep darkness. He rubbed his eyes and looked again, but the image, as if it had been there, was gone. Daniel felt a strange pulling sensation. Without thinking, he drew the little black number card out of his pocket. So you want to see how you rank on the big board, do you? The old woman said with a smile. Daniel shrugged his shoulders, then he nodded slowly. I guess I do, he replied. Well, like I tell all the other children, the old woman said with a twinkle in her eye, it's the only game in town. Now that's kind of a heck of a place to leave you hanging, isn't it? But too bad folks have my voice, don't want to say anymore. And number checker is 85 to 95. Nope, not going to do it. Sorry. Wait until tomorrow night. Nobody on it. So good night. Sleep tight. Bed bug bite, get some bug be gone or bug buzz or bug killer. Bug MD. That was bed bug dead bug dead bug dead beg bud or bug dead bug, something like that.